Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to this month's Arts Corner. And today I'm very excited to have a very special guest with us. This is Mike Belville. He's part of our core team. Hey, Mike, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kathryn. So happy to be here, and it's great talking with you.
Yeah, you
Having a
too.
fun time.
Yeah, we're having a good time. So, Mike, share with our folks out there a little bit about yourself and why you're here on Arts Corner.
Sure. Again, my name is Mike Belville. I just recently turned 60, so I hit the big 6-0. But when I was 52, I was diagnosed with initially with younger onset Alzheimer's. 3 years later, they changed it to Lewy body dementia with Parkinsonism. But I've been retired now for a little over 5 years from work. And art or creativeness or whatever you want to call it, I think has always been part of me. I used to love to draw when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And when I was like 10 or 12 years old, I used to draw Disney cartoons and give them to my mom, and she used to go, "Ooh, ah," as moms do, "Oh, that looks great,"
So
So when
you
I
were
was
giving,
12, yeah, I
you
was
gave
giving,
your art as a gift.
absolutely. But I've always been interested in art, but I think it morphed into photography, and specifically black and white photography.
Mm.
So I did a few weddings, for friends and family and things like that. But I always loved photography. But all those things well, it was a hobby, like most people do. And all those things kind of stopped and waned, and here and there. But it wasn't until my diagnosis, um, a few years ago, when I used to, one of the first things I did when I retired from work was I walked into my local senior center and I said, "Who do you have helping your folks with their technology uses?" Because that was my background. The thing that was interesting is the class they had after mine was a painting class.
Ah,
And they kept encouraging me to stick around.
the Google
And it
Gals.
probably the Google gals and the art instructor. It probably took about a year, until I finally said, "All right, I'll stick around." And so I finally did. And as luck would have it, the very next class, or the first class I decided to join, was what they call reverse oil on glass. So you're
You told me
painting
about
backwards.
this. You paint
I did.
backwards.
A lot of what I do with my art is to hopefully, the way I approach it now is that any piece, anything that I do, it's always with the frame of mind that I'm doing it as a gift for somebody.
Ah,
So it's always, I might get inspiration from a picture that I saw, that somebody may have posted on Facebook,
mhm.
of a favorite pet or a person. And I'll get into that part next. But it's always with the frame of mind that I want to be able to do this work or piece for them to give them a gift. And it's almost like I'm giving them a piece of me,
Mm.
because
So the
not to
gift is,
say ours,
it's
but
not
yeah, I
just,
mean, it
it's a piece of you goes with your piece of artwork that you give. You give of yourself,
yeah, I mean,
you give the gift of your artwork. That's really
I hope
beautiful.
so. I mean, it's giving them a little piece of my, I don't want to get too corny, but it's giving them a little bit of love. It's giving them a little bit of love from
Absolutely.
me to them.
Absolutely.
I did this for them because, I love that individual, and, and I want to give them a little something that hopefully they like and enjoy.
Would you mind sharing
Um,
some of your artwork with us? I know you have a whole folder, and I've been lucky to see some of it. Would you mind sharing your first piece, which I think is
my
pretty
very
spectacular?
what I talked about, yeah,
Your
very first
backwards
oil.
piece?
Yeah, the reverse oil on glass. That's this one right here.
Can you believe that? It is amazing.
So I loved hunting. And the reason I chose this particular picture is because I love birds. I love any kind of bird. And I used to hunt. And I tell folks that I no longer, you know, shoot with a gun. I shoot with a camera instead. And now I'm painting instead. But I did this particular painting, my very first one, and I gave it to my aunt, who I adore. I know before this recording, you and I were talking about, our backstories, and she was actually, I mentioned that I was actually born in the back of an army ambulance in Germany in 1960, and she was in the ambulance with me. So
Oh,
she helped deliver me with her husband. So I did that for her. Um, so that was my very first one, and this was my very first acrylic,
unbelievable.
and I actually call this my one-legged bird because I never realized until after the fact that it only has one leg. But the thing is that it woke something up in me that didn't even realize was there. Always used to draw when I was a kid, but painting always, for some reason, intimidated the heck out of me.
Look at that.
Um,
You've learned something new.
yeah, I mean, and if nothing else, I try to use this part of. It's not the reason why I do it, but when I talk to people about it, it's to show them, because one of the stigmas, that a lot of people have with, for folks who have dementia is that you can't learn anything.
Hmm.
You know, your life stops.
Yeah,
And I never painted at all until after my diagnosis.
that's amazing.
There's so much that I've learned to do since my diagnosis. So if nothing else, I'm hoping that will encourage other people to not be afraid to try something new.
Well, I think, Mike, that's actually something that's so important that we talk about in PAC, is that just try. Is it worth a try?
Why
Is
not?
it worth a try? And if it means something, like, don't be afraid to try something new, like picking up a paintbrush or
Yeah,
some
exactly.
or some colored pencils. Now, I would really love for you to share about, I think it's your friend Steve over there in the yellow vest. Could you mind sharing
Yeah.
that and tell the story about that? And then that inspired you, this first
This
painting.
this is actually my very first portrait that I ever did. I never even drew a portrait of someone, never mind painting one.
Mm.
And this is my buddy Steve, who was one of a number of individuals who I met in my very first support group, not long after my diagnosis. And Steve and I got to be very, 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 very good friends. And this year in April will be 2 years since he passed away.
Oh, I'm
Um,
so sorry you lost a friend.
so I did this, painting of him. And I think part of it, mostly and honestly, because of encouragement from my wife, Cheryl, because I was grieving pretty heavily, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like therapeutic for me to do this of Steve. And it's not perfect. It's not like a whatever, but it's my buddy Steve. And I
It's
gave it to his wife.
oh my God.
you know,
And well,
it's,
there's the love part, because you're right. It's
yeah,
not about, again, it's not about being perfect. Let me tell you, I couldn't do anything close to that. It's the meaning and the intention behind it. And the fact that you're first,
that's
holy crap. So then you took
really
this a step further now. You have other portraits here. Tell me about, I noticed something
yeah.
about your other portraits are all, it seems like they're in grayscale or black and white, sort of.
Exactly. The ironic thing is Steve is the only portrait that that I've done in color. All
Hmm.
these other ones, and you'll only see more. There's more than what's actually here. But this is the husband of a very dear friend of mine who I met again through the Alzheimer's Association. His name is Peter, and he passed away from Alzheimer's. Um, but I got to know um, his wife through advocacy work
Mm-hmm.
through the Alzheimer's Association, and I don't know. I just decided to do his in black and white, and ironically, I've now done about I think 8 or 9 portraits, and they're all of people who have passed away from a form of dementia.
Tell me a little bit
Yeah,
about, you shared with me that boat over there on the right. Do you
I
mind
was going
sharing
over there.
that one with me, with
Sure,
everybody, and tell us a little bit about the story?
sure. This is I was asked to speak at a fundraising event again for the Alzheimer's Association in Massachusetts, and um, I decided to do this painting, and it was a boat. This was a painting from actually a tutorial that I watched online on YouTube, and I decided to name the boat End Alls, which for folks who you see the hashtag End
Mm-hmm.
Alzheimer's is kind of their hashtag. So I decided to name it End Alls, and it's actually might be hard to tell, but it's actually sitting up in a marsh on blocks. Um, and the reason it's sitting up offshore is my thought process behind it was because they found a cure for
Mm.
Alzheimer's, so the boat anymore, and that's why it's sitting off up in near the edge of the woods in a marsh, and that's why it's getting all rusty and all the other things to it. So everything I've learned, like techniques or how do I do this or how do I do that, has all been done through YouTube. Um, Looking at, getting inspiration from other people of what they've done and looking at tutorials to see how they did it. And I just try it and see how it comes out.
Well, Mike, I thank
So,
you. You are very inspiring creatively.
no,
I mean, when I think, when I got on here with you, I was just thinking about the artwork, but to hear, even to find out that you've learned how to cook. I love cooking. I think it's one of the most creative things you can do, or you can make it creative and have fun with it. And editing and photography, So thank you for the inspiration. Do you have any words of advice for people who are going to maybe try getting creative?
well, one of the things that I learned for me, um, what helps me is when I'm doing my artwork, is one of my challenges with my diagnosis is that I get very anxious. My anxiety is up here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or even my depression is just, it's a roller coaster ride.
Yeah, sure.
Um, but when I'm doing my art, all that disappears. It just,
Mm.
it just goes away. And where I might be anxious or angry, or, it changes my moods. Um, it's like listening to a good song, good music, whatever you like. Um, so it helps reduce, my anxiety and my depression. So if I could offer anything, would be in one of my things that I like to tell people is I think one of the number one prescriptions doctors should be giving a person with a dementia diagnosis is social engagement. It's
Mm.
not medication. And not that medication is not important. Don't get me wrong. I take my pills because it's important. I do that, and I get that. But for me, my art is a form of social engagement
Ah,
because it allows me to do something of something of myself. But it just, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm selfish because it helps reduce my anxiety, it helps reduce my depression, and it allows me to hopefully give a gift to somebody of something that hopefully that they'll enjoy.
Yeah. So that's engagement. That's a long-term engagement with someone. If the intention behind what you're doing is to give a gift to someone else, that focus on someone else in some ways is beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you
So
so
for
much
me,
yeah, that's a beautiful
no,
perspective. And I thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing more of your artwork.
thank you. It's a pleasure meeting you. Can't wait. I know we're going to be.
You got it. All right. Thank you.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to help us spread Teeps's positive approach message around the world. And don't forget to click the bell to get notified when new videos are posted.